Make it happen. Make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to John Dudley Speaks. I'm your host. Holy shit, those visuals. London rapper, actress, and songwriter Simbi Ajikawa, aka Little Simz, is one of the most interesting musical artists to emerge in the late 2010s and early 2020s. Starting off in acting as far back as 2010, Simbi eventually landed on the E4 series Youngers, but by late 2015, she was gaining attention for her Lauryn Hill-inspired approach to hip-hop, even catching the eyes of Lauryn Hill herself, who she toured with the next year alongside Nas and Kehlani. Her creativity continued to be singular through her second record, Stillness in Wonderland, and soon after she was signed to AWOL Recordings, who distributed 2018's Gray Area, a fantastic record with depth, heft, and skill. Simbi was not playing around, and if she didn't make it clear here, she solidified how on top of her craft she was on 2021's Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, one of the best albums of the decade so far and my personal favorite record from that year. It's incisive, reflective, and emotionally raw, all while featuring some of the best rhyme schemes this side of To Pimp a Butterfly. No Thank You dropped the very next December, and it's got more of a mixtape feel that's comparatively candid, while also exploring mental health themes that have far more nuance than any other competitors in her lane. And that's what we've come to expect from Simbi in this prime of her career. And Lotus is no different, offering up another visceral, ambitious listening experience that's easily the best rap album that's been released this entire year.
June 4th and the night is fading. How am I escaping? My reasons don't need explaining. 8 months to the Pisces season change.
I was wondering what Simbi's post No Thank You record would sound like, given the situation with her lawsuit against her previous longtime collaborator Inflo, which pretty much severed that working relationship. Her work with Inflo is so locked in and singular, so how would she evolve as an artist in terms of instrumentation and musical structure? Well, it seems like the key there is Coco Roco collaborator Miles Clinton James, targeting an aesthetic that champions live instrumentation that's rooted in jazz, funk, and soul elements. We lead off with Thief, which slickly morphs together psychedelic guitars and an obscure chord progression and key, peppering in funky, snappy drum patterns that are intense. And that focus on percussion continues on Flood, which is brilliant in its bracing tension that you can find in the toms and the haunting bass line, adding an air of uneasiness to the track that complements Simbi's flows. I love the bossa nova feel of Only, the orchestral alt-pop tilt of Free, the George Clinton, Pharrell Williams-inspired funk of Lion, and the ABBA-inflected disco groove of Enough, with each pastiche she touches fitting into the overall product cohesively, partly because of the confidence of Miles Clinton James to bring these bold ideas to life. But it's really tracks like Young, Peace, the title track, and Blood, where I think he reaches genius levels of instrumentation, pacing, and arrangement. The washed out guitars and 90s alternative influence imbued into Peace, as well as the title track, is inescapable, uplifting, and entrancing, not to mention totally unexpected. And Young has even more bounce to its funk-heavy foundation, so much so that it really pops out when stacked against Simbi's weirder delivery, which we'll get to. Yet for me, the crowning achievement of this album, Blood, it's a beautiful musical canvas for Simbi and Wretch 32's group therapy session. It's spare in its embellishments, but powerful when it does introduce new movements, and it's patient enough to allow those movements to breathe, especially under the weight of the themes explored from each MC. So when it swells into such a natural climactic conclusion, it's a truly emotional experience that I feel ties this whole record together perfectly. There's really no one else in the rap space that can tell such an immersive story in their lyricism like Simbi can, and Lotus is further proof of her unmatched talent in that regard. Thief is a masterclass in tone setting, instantly painting a vivid picture of Simbi's situation, and immediately showing ire towards Inflo by pointing out his hypocrisy in light of their current rift. And her usage of the dates in June as a point in time to capture her feelings is an ingenious way of demonstrating how these emotions can escalate when given more time to sit with them. Flood continues on with this angle, but rather than centering its focus on Inflo, Simbi turns the lens inward to tout that, in spite of the setbacks caused by the dissolution of their relationship, she's planning on walking her own path where she makes the rules. However, I think Young is where the album starts to take a much bigger and bolder shape, as Simbi explores broader themes about being lively and bold in one's 20s, but the undercurrent of harsh, classist struggles thwarting that ability to stay young, it's a tricky tightrope to walk, and Simbi pulls it off beautifully. I also like the Fuck Me Pumps reference to Amy Winehouse, that rocked. Moving forward, I enjoyed how Simbi is able to balance lyricism that points to her renewed self-worth and belief, not just in her appearance, but in her talents. But she is still willing to be vulnerable and put her heart on the line. And that's all while flooding this record with intricate wordplay and rhyme schemes that are orderly, precise, and confessional. Free is a solid example of this, as well as Peace, which is a beautifully dictated story, full of heart, empathy, and painful realism, that has one line that spoke to me that's so poignant and real. In your heart you will always be home, so make peace with what you outgrow. And the running thread of money being the root of all deception and evil, definitely in response to the inflow situation. You can really hear in the manner of how Simbi approaches this, the hurt and the overall betrayal she feels. So that writing really rings out with authenticity. Yet once again, the masterstroke in writing here is what Simbi and Wretch 32 are able to pull off on Blood. A brutally honest depiction of distance between a brother and sister, and just how time and life can impact something you once thought was so tethered to your very existence. I mean, just from taking on the structure that it does, there's a wistfulness and a credibility that we feel in the descriptiveness that each MC brings to the table. And that, much like the rest of the album, still comes across as uniform, tactical even in its presentation. And overall, it turns out to be extremely effective in connecting. Right from the start with Thief, Simbi is so authoritative in her vocal timbre and delivery that you really can't turn away from her until the credits roll. It's on the level of a Kendrick Lamar or Tyler the Creator, and its ability to engage while also being totally entertaining and unpredictable. I'm going to call out Young first, actually, because it has far more in common with something out of a Gorillaz album than any of her recent output. Plus, her acting prowess is on full display here, presenting us with a fascinating character that's brash, in your face, and ultimately incredibly unique. That kind of playing with the format is apparent on Blood, as her performance alongside Wretch 32 excellently blends skillfully executed flows with a conversational appeal that's refreshingly ornate yet grounded. Much of Simbi's other performances across this thing take that same approach, and are enhanced by her mood or the themes that are informing where she wants to take her performance. So in essence, you hear her fury and anger on Thief, her bravado on Flood, her openness on Only, and her betrayal on Hollow, just to name a few. But to help a lot of this land, I think the features assist Simbi in complementing her style, as well as her adherence to atmosphere and her ability to shift between tones. The Abong JR feature on Flood is my absolute favorite, aside from Wretch 32's performance. Lydia Kiddo, Moses Sumney, Mira May, and Sampha really enliven the material with supplementary vocals that are ethereal and inspiring. And that doesn't happen if you don't have an artist at the core of this record that you can really buy what they're selling. And to that end, with Simbi, there's never a moment where you don't feel her magnetism on the mic. At 13 tracks and 50 minutes, this is literally 1 second longer than No Thank You. And I think it's actually a far more efficient track list that's way more in line with the expansive nature of Introvert, even though it's way shorter. The opening back-to-back smash of Thief and Flood is a perfect start to this record, reminding us why Simbi is such a force to be reckoned with while also wasting no time at all. But Young is her first bold swing, and I think it really clicks, especially with how unwieldy it is. I mean, to the listener, it makes it feel like this album could go any direction any minute. The midsection is a consistent run of absolutely magnificent feats of rapping, mixed with decadent yet minimalist tinged production, but then from Blood on, we get a final statement on the back end from Simbi. It's gripping and enthralling, full of emotional and instrumental nuance. The track lengths are right where they need to be for the most part, and with her oscillating between 2.5-minute tracks and 4-minute tracks and 6-minute tracks, she often puts the story at the forefront, and in essence, she always does right by what she feels the theme of the song needs. And that, to me, makes this listening experience so highly enveloping and valuable in the best way.
We don't care for what they say, that's my superpower. We don't care for what they say.
Bet you never seen a young black woman so fly. Simmons arrived, got the heart of...
Yeah, Lotus is yet another fantastic record from Simbi and blows a lot of other recent rap records out of the water. And to think that her run from Gray Area to Lotus is so near perfect, that's a really special thing in hip-hop and should be celebrated. It's one of the best albums of the year from one of our best current artists, and I can see myself going back to this one a ton in the years to come. But hey, that's just my perspective. If you're a Little Simz fan, she knocked it out of the park again. And if you're in search of an eclectic, jazz-laden rap gem full of important themes about family, inner peace, and dejection, you'll want to check this out. Alright, that's all I got. Bye!